All right, we're sitting down today. Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. We're going to talk about Florida today in great detail. All right. First of all, let me just say this before I move on, because there's a couple things I want to do before we get into Florida. One of them is not this. I want to deal with the hurricane thing. There's something I want to show you, which I think is really cool. And I think you guys can, I'm a Florida guy for years, and I think you guys could deal with this. I heard a lot of this moving into Hurricane Idalia. I heard a lot of, I don't really know what the hell's going on. I haven't heard anything. I don't know which way it's going. And hurricanes, all weather events like this can be incredibly difficult to predict. And I would like to give you some resources I think are pretty cool. How we used to cover this back in the day when I was the data journalism editor of People's Pundit Daily. First, though, before I do that, I have to say this to my critics out there. When you poll Florida one time, be right in the state of Florida, come back and see me. Otherwise, I'm pretty much just going to ignore you. All right, jealousy doesn't look good on you. You can't mess with the record. You know you can't. You look really sad. So you eat out of Mitch McConnell's backside. Who gives a damn? You're a pathetic little sad creature. And until you poll the state of Florida correctly, I'm going to ignore you. And if you're a fake pollster who steals my numbers and pretends they're theirs, then I really am going to ignore you. So moving on. This is the National Hurricane Center. Pathetic little weaklings. Here's the National Hurricane Center. All right, let me refresh it and make sure that we have Idalia right where she is. We do. Okay. Franklin will turn out. Where does, Rich isn't a meteorologist. How does he know about troughs and this and that, right? And pressure and stuff like that? Well, I'm going to show you that in a second. I didn't get it from the National Hurricane Center, although I very much appreciate the work they've done. All right, as we are right now with the last advisory, we have maximum sustained winds up to 80 knots or 90 miles per hour. The minimum central pressure, it has fallen to 971. Normally, that may be up a little bit from the last one. I'd have to check. But normally, when the pressure falls in a hurricane, it can spell bad news. Okay. Right now, we don't know whether or not how it's going to affect. We know it's going to affect parts of Georgia and the Carolinas. We just don't know there yet. It made landfall right on. Oh, I'm forgetting that beach, and I'm sorry and I apologize for that. But right by Cedar, which we're gonna talk about in a little bit at the poll. Very clearly, you could see storm surge, but it did keep on a northern trajectory last night, which is why it ended up obviously not cutting over as far south as Ocala as much as people thought, but most certainly hit Alachua inland in parts where Gainesville are. All right, so you can see the cone. No, it's small, but you can see the cone and where the last National Hurricane Center has it. It is due north more than it was last night, and it's very simple. It went from 14 miles per hour to 18 miles per hour, and it continued on a northern trajectory because there was a trough pushing down from here where I'm moving. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse. You probably can't. Can they, Laura? They can see the mouse? I think so. Right. And then you have the lighter air here. So it pushed it over to the right. It's just we didn't know when it was going to make that eastern turn. Most people didn't. Why am I going over this? Like I said, there was a lot of people I heard had a hard time. When I am dealing with weather events, of course, I listen to the National Hurricane Center, folks, but I want to introduce you to this website called Tropical Tidbits, who got probably, I don't know how many years ago it was. He was just a graduate student back then. I don't know, frankly, where he's at in his education now, but brilliant guy. And he has these commentaries. If you go to the homepage, right, this is from Tuesday. So he was going into what maybe you can expect from the night. You'll learn a lot from this guy, I'm telling you. And I'm not telling you to ignore the Weather Channel or the National Hurricane Center, but the guy does know his crap. He doesn't make forecast predictions. He gives you an idea of where it could go and why. And then for those of you who don't know, a lot of the National Hurricane Center and others, they use the GFS for hurricanes. That's the model they'll use. And in truth, that the GFS doesn't have the track record in predicting storm paths that another model has, which I personally like myself. The ECMWF is the Euro model. All right, this is what you call the Euro model. And we could backdate it and show you, but the Euro was once again, the first one to say, you know what? I think because of that trough, it's going to stay northern for just a little while longer before it cuts east, and then it will push over to the east. It is not always 100%, but they tend to be more accurate than some of these some of these other models, which are used in America more often. All right. So it did make landfall a little bit closer to Apalachicola is more than people thought, and things were underwater there this morning, and that's always sucks. But I have family myself, and they're pretty much like, the hell is going on? What do you know? And I show them this all the time, but they're like, what the hell does that mean, Rich? If you play around with it, if you listen to him, even when they're not at their events, the guy is super, super knowledgeable. And there's just, if you're a data nerd like me, which you are because you're most definitely watching this show, you can go through satellite imagery. It's awesome. I love this website. Super cool. Analysis tools where you could do surface analysis, ocean analysis. Of course, look at the forecast models we were just looking at. You can also look at hurricane season analogs, historical TC data. It's awesome. And the satellite imagery also is one of my favorite. But when we did hurricane forecasting on People's Pundit Daily, what we would do is give people different models. And the model that we featured all the time most definitely was the Euro, not the GFS. Why is that? Because the Euro outperformed the GFS when we looked at decades worth. All right. So there you have it. Very cool. It's tropicaltidbits.com. And I kind of miss covering these events. Not that, listen, they're tragic and they're terrible events, but I miss providing that service. It was always really cool. I always found it to be worthwhile. It's, you never want to get people caught up in a situation where they didn't get information that they needed, so maybe they didn't clear out in time, and unfortunately there's tragedies that were totally prevented. So there was a certain, what's the word I'm looking for, Laura, a certain fulfillment about doing that I kind of miss. But you guys can, honestly, you're smarter than than the ruling class gives you credit for. A gratification, right, Laura? Something like that. Yeah. You're smarter than the ruler class gives you credit for, and you'd have fun with that website. It's cool. All right. So also, one more thing about hurricanes before we move on. You cannot get mad at Democrats and the media for politicizing weather events like hurricanes and government response to these events. For instance, Hurricane Katrina, right? Laura in Puerto Rico, Donald Trump. Katrina was, of course, Bush. Hurricane Irma, Rick Scott, when he was the governor of Florida. Disgusting, despicable attempts by local media and national media to try to politically damage Rick Scott because of a superstorm that was unlike anything any of us alive have ever seen. It was a massive, massive storm. And for the most part, Rick Scott got us out of that storm with minimal, right, Laura? Minimal damage, considering the projections of how Irma was going to tear through the state of Florida. It was larger than the state of Florida. It was a massive storm. And his image completely rebranded during that storm. Rick Scott was elected with a 42% approval and or favorability rating, depending on which cycle we're talking about, before he ran against Bill Nelson for the U.S. Senate. He never had majority approval until Hurricane Irma came around. And because of his leadership on Hurricane Irma, it made him a more popular governor. And I think in the end, it absolutely, at least marginally helped him defeat Bill Nelson, although I think that was part of the national environment that year. And then with Florida bucking the national environment, which it does often, I think the Floridians found out that Bill Nelson was not the moderate, NASA hero, astronaut hero that he claimed to be. And that he was, in fact, a very simple puppet of Chuck Schumer and Democratic special interests. So he stopped acting like voting like the moderate he was acting like. Anyway, bottom line is, You cannot get mad at the Democrats and the media, if you're a Republican, for attempting to politicize weather events for political gain, and then cheer on weather events as an opportunity for your candidate to maybe get a few points, in the polls, a bounce of a few points. What I've seen in the last 48 hours is disappointing. When you're cheering on that hurricane, understand those are people's homes, lives, not to mention Florida's in great risk of an insurance crisis. I was hoping and praying the state of Florida was going to dodge a hurricane all hurricane season. As many of you know, I have referenced it over and over in every poll. I mean, every show before we talk about the polls. They can't afford to have any event, let alone one that does significant damage. So let's pray Idalia does not cause tremendous damage in the state of Florida or any state for that matter. All right. Let's get into it. Very disappointing, though. Very, very, very disappointing. Let's see. Okay. Yes. First and foremost, we're going to go through a couple of graphics here that kind of lead us into it. Here is the poll we did in Florida last, which was toward the end of June as we were getting into July. Okay. All right. Oh, no. Sorry. This is June 2nd. And I'm wrong about that, but that's fine. Whatever. It's June 2nd. Because I want to talk about the change and the difference between that poll and this poll that we just did and are just now putting out. Oh, YouTube members. Again, I don't know if everyone has used that code, but use the code that we gave you for locals. Become supporters of locals, which that code will take away the cost of doing that for that month. And then you'll be able to get that stuff always early, like locals does. Locals gets things early all the time. Garrett, I just was reading your question, which sidetracked me. There's actually a couple of them that Laura put in there. It's not Q&A day, but sometimes I'll see a question which, she throws in there, hoping I'll answer. And I'll get to that question because I have a graphic that we're actually going to talk about the evangelical support. All right. And all right. So that's interesting. And then Thinking Advocate, your question about do we have any poll indicating a level of support for an America First party? We've been asking Republicans across the board whether or not they consider themselves America First or traditional Republican, and we're not leading them with that question. So we have found out that many people who pick traditional Republican, in fact, do believe that it's a Ronald Reagan kind of definition of a Republican. America First is winning everywhere anyway. But it isn't exactly true that Reaganism is the traditional wing of the Republican Party. Mitt Romney's not a Reaganite. Mitch McConnell is not a Reaganite. Hell, folks, 90% of elected Republicans, at least in Congress, are not Reaganites. The people who are pundits on TV are not Reaganites. They pretended to be on Reagan's coattails once he became a popular president, but most of them couldn't stand Ronald Reagan if they were around that long. But we're going to talk about that because I just am gathering more data. We have national data and we have statewide data. We can look at it here as well. More Republicans in the state of Florida this month consider themselves America First Republicans than traditional Republicans. And that is a change over time in Florida. Even though Florida's been MAGA, they have told us in the past, it's been close with a lot of unsures. But I would tell you that it's at least, I would say you're looking at a base of at least a third, but I could be wrong. And there's room to grow there because I don't think everybody knows what MAGA means yet. And also younger and more non-white people are more America First than white voters, especially white older voters. Interesting, right? All right, but here's the map I'm trying to show. As you can see in our last poll, DeSantis absolutely had Panhandle support. Trump was leading in the Panhandle, but it was only because of his strength in Panama City, out in Pensacola, where DeSantis also had support. You can see it right there. right? And then Liberty all the way to Escambia, it was more of a Trump area. Trump had some exurb and suburban support in Tallahassee, but more of the urban areas in Tallahassee, where the capital were for DeSantis. And see Trump, younger Tallahassee support there. Why? Because she's Latina. That's why. But Panhandle was one of those where Trump led, but it was closer. You can see in the Jacksonville area and in Duval County, DeSantis certainly had support, right? Trump led, but he certainly had support. He also had support in Alachua, although in greater Alachua, I would say DeSantis' support was more Gainesville. In greater Alachua, especially educated, more higher income Gainesville, but in greater Alachua, it was Trump country, as you can see around it. And in the Orlando, Central Atlantic Coast area, it was a fight. Again, Trump led everywhere, but some places were kind of close. You can see a lot of blue here. Even in Tampa was also fairly close in some of these areas. You can see a lot of blue. Let's zoom in a little bit. See? A lot of DeSantis supporters out throughout the corridor, right? You can see that. The Palm Coast, the Space Coast was Trump country. All right, we can see that. Daytona had some DeSantis support without a doubt, all the way down to Miami and in Fort Lauderdale was Trump country. DeSantis did have some support in Cape Coral, the Fort Myers area. He was doing well there. Sarasota, some of the older retirees, more traditional Republicans, he was doing well there. He was losing. I mean, overall, it was 52.5 to 32.6. And all other candidates were in single digits. 0.1% chose someone else, and 9%, remember this, I'm saying this for a reason, 9% were undecided. And again, in Miami and in Miami Beach, through Fort Lauderdale, Trump had a lead, but there was definitely DeSantis support. All right, now let's look at the new map. And by the way, if you go to these maps, for those of you who may be new and you don't know, if you go to any one of these maps and you click on any one of these bubbles, for instance, you'll see it'll stop moving around and you'll be able to target the interview. Okay. Certain to vote, voting for Donald Trump. This is a male. He's 59 years old. He's white, not Hispanic. He's a conservative. He considers himself an America First Republican. High school or GED equivalent, makes 30 to 50 a year, is retired, is separated from his wife, has kids. They're all over 18 years old. He was a veteran of the U.S. military. His religion is Protestant, other Christian, and he's from rural Pensacola. He's outside of Pensacola in a rural area in Bay County. Bay County is a very, very, very Republican county. All right. Let's click away from that for a second. What can you see immediately? What jumps out at you immediately? Aside from the fact that there's a lot more red. And let's just go over the top lines. Former President, as of August 29th now, former President Donald Trump leads his closest rival and current Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, 56.8 to 18.1 in the Sunshine State battleground poll. Vivek Ramaswamy came in at 6.6, and all other candidates remain in the low single digits, with 1.3% choosing someone else, and now only 4.7 remaining undecided. So the undecided vote fell by half. Obviously, many of them went to Trump. Trump did get some of the people who left Ron DeSantis. That happened. I'm going to show you another graph in a second. As new people have entered the race, it is much harder to continue to rise because it's basic statistics. It went from 10 choices to 16 choices now. And yet Trump rose. You'll see how the someone else swolled. It did. It was nothing before. All right, so it was like 0.1. What did I just say? I'm not going to go back, but it was like 0.1, 0.3, something ridiculous. Now it's 1.3. It swelled a little bit. But those who were changed their minds went to Donald Trump. And what you can clearly see is that the panhandle is much redder now. Okay, Panama City is basically all red. Almost all red. By the way, we only asked, this is a word about methodology. Florida is a close primary state. We put party up there, and you may see that there's like a little bit of Democrats and a little bit of independents in the Republican nomination sample. Those are not independents and Democrats. We still, like every other exit poll, we will still ask people who are eligible or have intent to change within the time frame required to be able to vote in a closed primary. If they indicate that, we will count them because they do. It's not even that big. But we still say, regardless of voter registration, what do you normally, or generally speaking, what do you consider yourself? A Republican, a Democrat, an independent, or something else? You'll notice even exit pollsters do that. And in 2016, about 19% said that they actually are registered as Republicans, but they consider themselves independent. We got a little bit more, a little bit over 1 in 5 this time, but about 1 in 5. Very similar. What did jump out, very small number of Democrats, by the way, very low single digits. People who they're registered and they're eligible to vote in the Republican primary, but they consider themselves Democrats. What did jump out at me is that in 2016, Hispanic Republican primary voters were only about 15% of the electorate. Now I say only, it's a big chunk for a Republican primary. This time it's over 1 in 5. So Republicans are getting more Hispanic. The primary electorate is getting more non-white, and that is having an impact. All right. So while you still very clearly see that Governor DeSantis does have some support still in the Orlando, North Atlantic region, although Trump is just absolutely dominating the Space Coast and the Palm Coast, you can also see Tampa is much, much redder than it was before. Jacksonville, Duval County, much redder than it was before. All along the Atlantic coast, much redder than it was before. Southwestern, see Fort Myers and Sarasota. Remember how blue it was in Sarasota last time? There's still some blue in Fort Myers, but very clearly. And in Naples, by the way, there's like a single DeSantis voter, I think. And nope, that's a Nikki Haley voter. Sorry. The rest is Trump. It's all Donald Trump, all through Naples. This is an area of Monroe County, and that in and around that area. This is a big deal because here's a perfect example. This is a male, not a super senior, but within that, get right below 74, within that category of people that I don't want to say Trump struggled with, but when the polling was closer, it was one of the areas Trump did not do as well in. All right. So male, 70, white, not Hispanic, conservative, definitely an America First Republican, some college or an associate degree, but makes under 30, is retired, divorced, has no kids, isn't a veteran or an active duty member of the military, obviously, is a Protestant, lives in suburbia, but always certain. Like, this is someone who's like 98.6% certain to vote. And that could have helped Ron DeSantis a couple of months ago. As of right now, this is going to hurt him and hurt him bad. And we're going to look at that when we get to age. The Miami area, I got to zoom in on. Okay, look at that. Look at how dominant that is for Donald Trump. That's, folks, let me just keep these both in the frame. Let me look over in the viewport. You can see both, right? You can. That's friggin' dominance. All along the corridor, the I-4, right? All in the Tampa area. This is, yeah, Laura. I hear Laura in the other room. She's talking. This is really bad, Laura. This is a friggin' blowout. This is looking like DeSantis is relegated this time to the Capitol in his own state. And that's about it. I mean, that's the only place I see where he has a big lead. However, Tallahassee, when we're looking at the by region, the exit polls always say Panhandle, North, Central Florida, or something like that. And let's say they'll call it 18% of the electorate. Tallahassee is a good chunk of that north. There's no doubt about it. So is Jacksonville. Hell, so is Gainesville. I mean, you have all this area that considers the North Panhandle, North Central. The Panhandle itself is about 8%. And the rest of the North is about 10%. All right, you have Miami, that's about 26, ballpark, right? Tampa, let's call it 16 to 19. I'm ballparking it. Orlando, Atlantic Coast, I'm ballparking it at 20. So in the Southwest, so it's not enough, especially in a Republican prime. It's not even close to enough. Yeah, Laura, this is a career-ending loss. I was talking about this with Bannon earlier on War Room. They're the advisors and the social media grifters who are trying to make names for themselves. They're going to destroy this man's career if this keeps up. Because it started back in May when it was, hold on, I'll show you guys in a second what I'm about to be looking at. In May, it was Trump 47.8 to DeSantis 35.8. All right, so really close. Let's round and call it 48 to 36. Trump plus 12. Only 11.9 combined chose some other candidate, and 4.5% were undecided. Then you move into June, which we were just looking at, and in May we heard, I really like the guy. He's a great governor, but I just prefer Trump as my president. I don't think he's ready yet. By June, that lead widens out. And actually, you know what? We can go to that now. Let's go to that now. I can get rid of this. We can always come back. We can always come back and look again because I want to get to the crosstabs. Here is the trend for Florida. All the polls we put out so far. Here's May, right? And that's what we were just saying. By June, it was, you know what? Some of the things he's doing is bothering me and really just kind of affirming why I prefer Trump as the president. He should just concentrate on being the governor, and he's getting on my nerves a little bit. Some of them were flat out like, I'm starting to dislike this guy. And now look at where we are. 57%, Trump continuing to rise. This one was a pretty big leap, though. Someone else is a combined 20.4, but it doesn't matter because I hear all the critics say, well, because there's 18.1. I hear all the critics say, oh, but you know what? If they all consolidated, they're still in the 30s. What are you talking about? They're just under 40%. And the truth is, not all of these would go to the anti-Trump candidate. Trump's ceiling in Florida is very high. And by the way, I went back and did some research. In 2016, the exit polls in Florida did mirror the pre-election polls for the primary in Florida, which were airing on MSNBC and Fox News. 25% of the Republican Party won't vote for Donald Trump if he's the nominee. Go look at the exit polls if you don't believe me. It's right in there. And because I could remember them saying it confirms it. And I remember thinking back in 2016, looking at those exit polls and saying, why is Fox and MSNBC and all these others, why are they only focusing on the 25% who said they wouldn't vote for Trump? Because if you look at Rubio, if you look at Cruz, they were all right in the same ballpark, 23, 24. But it was only a focus on Trump. At the end of the day, Barack Obama's pollster is 100% telling the truth. They're lying. They're not going to vote for Joe Biden. Not in those kinds of numbers. Is there always party crossover? Absolutely. And we're going to show you the crosstabs in a second. We're going to take a look at that crossover. But if you think we're seriously living in the day and age in a modern America, where 25% of a party is going to abandon its presidential candidate despite anything. You think we're still in like Reagan times, where Reagan took 20% of the Democratic vote. Then you just simply don't know what the hell you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. Parties don't fracture like that anymore, folks. Not at the presidential level. We're not talking about Roy Moore, which, by the way, was a lie. And Doug Jones also used bots, like someone else in this conversation. That was not even 25%. So this is a presidential election, which are A-B choices. It's going to be, do I care more about these prosecutions against Donald Trump that sound really kind of screwy to me and just totally unfounded, or the guy who got bribed by China, Romania, Ukraine? Come on. It's not how it works. Even if Biden gets thrown out because some magical tape appears that everyone's talking about, and I'm not saying the tape doesn't exist. I am saying put up or shut up, but I'm not saying the tape doesn't exist. There's supposedly, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, There's supposedly a tape out there that is going to end Biden's effort at reelection. He may not even stay in office. I got to tell you, my friend met with Ted Cruz. His guy's running for office, and Ted Cruz told him that Joe Biden, there could be smoking gun evidence that Joe Biden not only took a bribe, but then killed somebody to cover it up. And Democrats still would not convict him in the U.S. Senate. So I don't know what smoking gun evidence people think they have, but if you think that's going to move the needle at all on Democrats in the Senate, you're crazy. Water. Hold on. I'm Rubio in it. I don't know, Laura. I'm like getting old or something. My voice is not recuperating from that game. I don't know. I was hollering like a 16-year-old. Like in football and me, folks, Laura's, you ain't no better. I refer you to the Super Bowl in what was it? Super Bowl, what? Somebody fill me in. Eli Manning makes this Hail Mary bomb in the final 3 seconds of the game for the Giants to take the lead when everyone's holding on to his shirt. I thought I flipped out when it came to football because I'm a loud football watcher. If you don't like loud, obnoxious, maybe a little drunk company during a football game, you don't want to go to a football game with me. I'd like to have a little something called fun. All right. And football is supposed to be loud, aggressive, filled with testosterone, and yes, somewhat violent. I loved being a Florida Gator at the height of Gator glory because I loved watching the intensity and people getting crushed, you know? I loved watching Moreno almost get his head taken off. That was great. So Laura's no better, let me tell you. Listen, should I show this? Everyone loved the preparation of this show. I'm going back and forth with myself right now because I feel like, yeah, let's do it, and then we'll get into the crosstabs of two things. All right. Listen, people are going to have a canary. It is what it is. Presidential elections, or I would say gubernatorial elections, should not be considered highly predictive presidential elections. They are not. They do not predict how a candidate is going to perform at the presidential level. It was 08, right, Laura? It's 08. Laura and I are having a back and forth. It was the Super Bowl in 2008. That was, yeah, right? What was, yeah, but Obama he took office in 09. He was elected in 08. He took office in 09. So maybe it was 09. Maybe somebody's got to find that pass for me. Manning with the Hail Mary. I swear it must have been 40-something yards. It was a huge pass. And everyone's holding on to him, pulling him down, and he just bombs it. And Laura and I, the only time we were quiet the whole game was during, maybe not even through the whole entire pass, but a good 2 or 3 seconds of dead silence. That was fun, Laura. Good times, baby. Good times. All right, so let me word on methodology here. We interviewed 1,419 registered voters. As locals knows, there will be a data append. It will not change the overall very much at all. This is what it is. All right. But there were people who completed phone interviews after, and I think, if I was to look, I would say maybe it's 15 interviews. It's not go. I looked at it, and it's not going to change the. It may even make it worse for Ron DeSantis because they're from the phone. And interestingly, Ron DeSantis had been performing much better in phone interviews, especially peer-to-peer interviews, and that is no longer the case. Trump was just dominating. I do see how Florida Atlantic University got him in the 60s. I do. I don't know that they're going to continue to have him in the 60s, but I'll be shocked if their new poll doesn't come out and have him closer to 60 because they typically and I'm not saying they overstate him. I'm saying they're pegging Trump's support higher than us a little bit each time. Not that they're overstating it. They could be on the money. We could be understating it. They had DeSantis at 21 when we still had him at 34 or 33. Right? Was this trend 30, 34, something like that? So I remember looking at that and they had him at like 21 or 23. And I'm like, really? because we have them in the 30s. So they're a little bit less favorable to DeSantis and more favorable to Trump than we are. So I could see why that is now, because the online is the only thing that saved him from falling well below 20%, well below. The phone component was abysmal. It's terrible. Anyway, we conducted with this sample 1,419 interviews with registered voters in Florida from the 27th to the 28th via mixed mode, to include 1,316, we dubbed this likely, who were screened by self-reported likelihood to vote and vote history. Meaning, do we know they voted in these different years? All right. Interviews conducted online are sourced through Lucid, Sin Company, and phone interviews, including P2P, SMS, and text online, are sourced from, as you all know, the Aristotle National Voter File Database. Results were weighted for gender, age, race, education, and region. The overall sampling error is, before I get into that, I have to say, very lightweight. Very lightweights needs to be applied. Very representative sample across the board, from the phones, online, all very representative. The 2020 voter pool, they were like Trump +4, which is exactly almost what he won by. So very, very representative sample. Very light touch on education, which simply was impacted by geography. We use a technique called rake weighting. And one day I should do short videos about weighting techniques, different kinds of weighting techniques and what they are, along with what's the difference between a margin of error and a confidence interval. What is it, why is it more correct now to use the term or the overall sampling error? I should do short videos like that, and I will. But I will say geography adjusted education slightly, very slightly. And postgrads went from like 15.4 to 15.1. Some college went up from like 30 to 32. I mean, very light weights, very. And when you use rake weighting, you allow it to adjust other variables that you don't consider fixed, and you apply each of the variables that you want to weight the data set with one at a time. And then it will adjust things like party. It'll adjust things like ideology, anything you leave unweighted. All right. So that's a great idea for a video. I don't know why I'm not doing that. I mean, inside the numbers, the surface, and just inside the numbers, that takes forever, an hour or two alone to do. And some of this stuff really needs to be side videos. It's a great idea. The overall sampling error is plus or minus 2.7 at a 95% confidence interval. The sampling errors for the Republican and Democratic presidential nominations are plus or minus 8 and plus or minus 4.1 at also a 95% confidence interval, respectively. It is important to note that sampling errors for subgroups are higher. All right. So I don't know why this has disappeared. Let me refresh it and see if that will work. What in the Sam hell is going on? Bear with me 1 second, guys. I must have hit a setting or something. I want you to be able to see the data labels. Give me 1 second. And then I'll refresh it again. Fix one. Oh, I see what I did. Okay. I merely hit 2 different settings, and apologies for taking the time to fix this. 12:42. I'm almost there. And it's republished. Redo it again. All right. Ta-da! All right. 45% to 37. I think I erroneously said 38 on Bannon. I think I did. I was mixing up the Cornell West share thing. But in any event, this is without Cornell West. I'm going to show you with the crosstabs in a second the difference. And we are going to dig down into those write-ins. You see the light red? Those are write-ins. Why did I make it light red? Because they're almost all Republicans saying they would write in a different candidate if A or B is not on the ballot. There's less undecided with Trump than there is with DeSantis. There is a slightly larger other with DeSantis than there is with Trump. And I'm telling you what that is right now. Those are the people that are just not going to vote. How do we know? We can cross them. We can cross-tabulate them with the people from the candidate-specific loyalty question we ask. And we can very clearly see those who say, I would not vote, are either in undecided or in someone else. That's where they went. For the most part, those who say they won't vote, most of them are true to their word and they refuse to pick the other Republican candidate. And the same is true of Kennedy's voters. They say they're not going to vote, or they say they consider voting for the third party. There's a lot of Kennedy voters who, at the end of the day, said, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. So Trump has what is a historic 8-point lead. I don't think we have ever found somebody leading by 8 points in the state of Florida in a presidential cycle. In a presidential race, a hypothetical. 1-4. One time we had Rick Scott up by 6, and I think April of 2018. It's a long time ago, so forgive me if I can't remember. But I want to say it was in April of 2018. Then that shrunk, though he was still ahead of Nelson. I think the final was like Scott plus 1 or 2, something in that area. But anyway, always very close. Razor-thin margins. Florida is not a blowout state for presidential elections. George Bush won it by 4 and change. That was considered a huge win. Donald Trump's win against Biden in 2020, considered a huge win. Again, notice I am separating presidential election margins from, let's say, Senate and governor, especially governor. They tend to be close as well. But this time they weren't, because Florida's moving and because it's a gubernatorial election and it was an incumbent with a positive approval rating, who at the time was seen as an America First governor. Okay, now against DeSantis, it's tied at 38%. Do I think DeSantis could edge it out? I do. The problem is this. These people aren't playing around. The ridiculous ones you see in this one are just that. Statistically insignificant and kind of ridiculous. Some of them are even Trump voters telling us to go F ourselves. Right, Laura? Well, I'm like, why wouldn't you just pick Trump? Because they're just so angry. They literally told me and they told us to go ourselves. I think they don't, maybe some of them don't even trust that Scantron enough to read that bubble. I kid you not. This is another story altogether. 7% for Ron DeSantis is another story altogether. Maybe you get 1 or 2 for Vivek, and we'll look at it in a second. 1 for Mike Pence, 1 for Nikki Haley, something like that. 80-something people said they were going to write in a candidate. 95% of them wrote in Donald Trump. 95%. The difference with Cornel West in and out of the race is minimal. Roughly the same amount. Say they would write someone in, and it's 94.3% for Donald Trump. So let's look at what that means when you look at these specific demographic groups. And this is getting to that one question. Who was it? Jonathan. Or wouldn't it be John? Oh, no. Oh, not yet. Jonathan, stay tuned. Because Frank had asked me next month, can we talk more about my guitar stuff? Stay tuned. I will learn the theme song to Zelda. All right. Absolutely. I actually know how to do some of it already. I just kind of picked it up and did it. I always play a little drop down half a step. So I got to make sure that it is within the, that it is the correct scale. All right. So, and correct notes, period. I think it's a C, but I'm going to drop down half a step. So we'll have to see. No pun intended. Garrett asked before, as we're looking at this, I don't mean to offend anyone, but I shared the locals post showing evangelical support for both Trump and DeSantis to my fam. They asked, why didn't evangelicals support them more? That is a good question. With Trump, you're already looking at historical margins. I split evangelicals and white evangelicals to show, because when you're looking at the exit polls and all the other media pollsters, they're really showing you white evangelicals. You'll notice that most of the time it will say white evangelical, and they only, for some reason, reference whites. We're doing both. There are, without a doubt, Anyone who's a Protestant, an evangelical, consider himself born again, you've been to church, you go to praise and worship, you know that there are Democrats there. Is the place majority Republican? Of course. But is it all Republican? No. It is not. I think a lot of people in the media and the media sets themes and narratives for people, and that's unfortunate because some people misunderstand it, Garrett. Evangelical churches are not as monolithic as, say, an urban Baptist black church, which is probably close to 100% Democrat, or used to be. But even still now, with some breaking away, it is not the same as those two things are not the same. Like, a mega church in Georgia, Andy Stanley, North Point, is not going to be as Republican as, say, an urban black megachurch in Atlanta. That would be more Democratic than Andy Stanley's church would be more Republican, even though very clearly it's going to be Republican. Now, I'm thinking, Laura, are there some congregations out there, maybe like a Pastor Jeffries or something, that could have, almost unified Republican congregation? I guess. But when you're talking about so many people, there's these mega churches, they're so big. There most definitely are Democrats. Now, Biden's not doing well even with non-white evangelicals. But, we'll see it in the primary vote. There's almost no evangelical vote in the Democratic nomination. All right, so overall, you can see the gray bar is Trump, the red bar is DeSantis. There's whites, there's males, females. Whites, Hispanic is a real problem for Ron DeSantis. And by the way, like I said, 33% of Trump's Hispanic support would write him on the ballot. And in fact, they did. Cubans also, DeSantis is doing well with them, but he's not doing as well as Trump. Black voters, same thing. Even Asian voters, high school or less, some college associates, same thing. Even 4-year grads, same thing. Advanced grads, same thing. Urban areas, big disparity. Suburban areas, not as big, but he's underperforming Trump. Rural areas, big underperformance. Evangelical, white evangelical, conservative, and independents. All right, let's get to the crosstabs. It's 12:51 already. I kind of wonder if I should just get this over with. That's what I'm saying, and just get it over with. Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. All right, folks. Wow, what a time, right? We have the hurricane moving up the coast right now. Came in from the Gulf Coast west side, the Gulf Coast of Florida. Now coming up, it's cutting across. Looks like it's in. Is it in Georgia at this point? I'm gonna actually check that out just to give you an idea. But you know what? This is why we tell you it's making its way into Georgia now. Yeah, and this is why we tell you we have a natural gas generator. But even we knew we needed a solar generator as well. I was just thinking about some family I have there, and I said, I'm getting one of these for them. I should never have, left them without it. So maybe you have one, but your family needs one. Authorities are already worried about extremists targeting the power grid. But we're even talking about incompetence, and now, of course, today, even weather events. That's why you need a solar generator. The new Patriot Power Generator 2000X is portable, but it's powerful enough to power your phones, yours or your loved one's medical devices, even your refrigerator. And folks, if you go to 4patriots.com right now, they have great deals up, which you can still use this code with. Use the promo code TPP10 at checkout, and that will get 10% off the new Patriot Power Generator 2000X. They're also stackable now. They come with stackable units to increase your power. This code is for your first purchase only, but it can be used for anything. I would just stress to use it on the Patriot Power Generator 2000X or something else that is ticket item high enough that you're going to save yourself a good chunk of money, because that's what we want you to do. One more time, 4patriots.com. Use the promo code TPP10 at checkout to get 10% off a new solar generator today. And real quick before we go, we can do a lot better than that deal. See, you're a viewer and watcher and listener, whatever it may be, inside the numbers, so we can get you a much better deal from the folks at jamandbean.com. Patriot owned, Michigan based, COVID patriots, fought against the COVID tyranny, and now they are offering superior products that Laura and I and the kids just love. Gourmet popcorn. They even have dried candy now, right? Laura, the Skittles, the Starburst. They were amazing. They were amazing. Freeze dried. Yeah, freeze dried Starburst, freeze dried Skittles. And they taste exactly like them. They're amazing. And the syrup. Yeah. Michigan, trying to take some of Vermont's market share. But of course, to claim the fame is that these guys are 100% grade A, class A coffee roasters. And whether you're in a rush, like sometimes I am, and you need to grab a K-cup, or you want not just freshly roasted, but professionally delicious roasted coffee, they're the ones to go to. If you sign up and get a new subscription right now at Jam and Bean, use the promo code TPP40 at checkout and get yourself exactly that, 40% off. Plus, when they renew every month, you're still going to get 10% off. And honestly, the big deal for me, I literally have it right here. That's how much I like it. And my son loves it. The big deal for us over here, folks, is this. Whoops. Later on in the day, maybe I don't feel like I can tolerate a dark roast anymore, but I hate medium roasts. Just don't like them. They're too weak. They're not full-bodied enough. You go to the grocery store and try to get one, you're going to get one that's got this styrofoam thing in it, half the K-cup. God knows what that's doing to your body as you're running boiling hot water through it. It's disgusting. They put the R&D in. This is a true full-bodied medium roast in a K-pot, in a K-cup. Unbelievable. It's delicious. Again, TPP40 at checkout. All right, let's get back to it, love. Let's get back to it. This is the old one. There are parts where I want to compare some of the support. I think one of the biggest deals this time around was the change in the white vote share. Trump is always leading among non-whites, but last poll we conducted, and I can even get it, exactly these margins, hold on. Well, I got them next to me. I'll just look at it. Last poll we conducted, let me go to this on region. Let me go to, well, hell, I'll go to all since it's already got the nomination. Last time Trump led with white voters, 50.6 to 34.7. This month, Trump leads. And by the way, Florida thinks the country's headed on the wrong track. And although Biden's approval is close to what we had nationally, his disapproval is through the roof. So this is like an intense dislike for Joe Biden in Florida. Trump leads this month among white voters 57.1, to 21.9. And instead of doing that, let me just do this. That enabled Trump to really widen out his lead in some areas of the state where it was closer. The Panhandle, obviously, for white voters. Also, as you can see, where is it? His Hispanic vote share went up as well. All right, so he was leading among Hispanics. Whoops, that was age, fool. He was leading among Hispanics 62.8 to 24.9. This month, he's leading 63.5 to 9.3. So a little tick up, a little reassurance of Hispanic vote. And by the way, we spoke to more Hispanics this time. The sample size was larger this time. And 9.3 for Ron DeSantis. Vivek Ramaswamy is getting 7% of the Hispanic vote. He's getting 6% of the white vote, 10% of the black vote, 9% of the Asian and other vote. Trump is running it away. It was a question somebody had asked me before. Running away with Asians. And as I showed you on the last graphic, he's actually doing better than other Republican candidates, to include the sitting governor, with Asians. The Asians are only about 2% in the state of Florida on a good day. Other races are about 3%. So you combine them together, you're looking at like 4% ballpark. Whites are 62 to 64%. Hispanics, we have just about at 20% of the electorate now. 16 to 20 is what they usually are. And black voters, around like 12. This is the nomination, though, so it is going to be a little bit different. All right, looking at Cuban, Puerto Rican, all right. Some of this was closer last time. If you guys remember, the Cuban vote was still Trump, but it was 70.3 to 20.2. It is now 75.5 to 8.2. Puerto Ricans were 62.8 to 37.2. Now Puerto Ricans are backing Trump 69.9 to 14.1. That's going to be a big deal when we move on to the general. You need to remember that. Other Hispanics back Trump 48.8 now. That is worse for DeSantis than last month when he was at 22.4. You can see Vivek actually has 12% of the other group now. And Trump was at 51, and now he's at 48. So he took down 3 points, but such a small group. I don't know that I care all that much about 3 points. I do think, though, that obviously Cubans are a big deal. Hispanics overall are a big deal. So that matters. This is what I was telling you before. So these are only eligible voters are included in the primary, but when you ask them, they do consider themselves to be something else. About 20% of the Republican primary vote in Florida considers themselves to be independent, not Republicans, which I found to be interesting. I went back and looked because I'm like, God, only 60%. Is this too liberal of a sample or something going on here? And in fact, in 2016, bear with me. In 2016, oh crap, I didn't hit primary. In 2016, all right, let me get to Republicans. So let me just go to the questions at the bottom. It's so much easier. I can't stand it. I can't stand looking the other way. It's so stupid for graphic purposes that the news agencies try to show you. I don't really care about any of that. I'd rather just here. Yeah. In 2016, 75% said they were Republican, 22% said they were independent or something else, and only 3% said they were Democrats. So a little bit more. Oh no, I'm just a little bit shy of that. So instead of 75, I believe it's like 71 or 72. I'd have to go and look it up, but I'm pretty sure. And then Democrats are low single digits. So it's a little bit more independent. If it turns out to be more Republican, that's actually going to help both candidates a little bit. But you can clearly see Trump carries into people who say they're independent, consider themselves independents. They also carry Democrats, Chris Christie, Nikki Haley. They're not Democrats. They're registered and eligible to vote in the primary, but they're considering themselves that. Who would I, maybe like a Bill Kristol Republican, something like that. All right, so let's move on. Ideology, big deal. 64.8% of conservatives say they're backing Donald Trump. They will make up a large chunk of the Republican electorate. Right now, we have a little bit less than usual, but still in the 60s%. They'll call themselves conservative, identify as conservative. All right, so in the last poll, Trump had 56.3% of self-identified conservatives. DeSantis had 33%. Now DeSantis has 19%. Trump has 65%. I mean, that's part of the consolidation. You can see there's overlap there with white conservatives. Liberals, same thing. Trump went up from 43 to 45. DeSantis went down 32.7 to 17 flat. Liberals, Trump actually went down from 50 to 40, and DeSantis went down 26.6 to 14. So if you go down here, you can see unsure, no opinion, 4% liberal, 7% moderate, 4% conservative. So there's just not a whole lot of deciding left to happen here. You need people to change their mind when someone is above a majority this much. Well, that's about it. Of those who self-identified as Republicans, because there's just no way for us to check ahead of time. we have to look kind of retroactively. So unfortunately, there'll be some Republicans who slip through our fingers on this. But America First Republicans, Trump is carrying them 75.1 to 11.7. And I'm curious what it was last month. Last month, Trump was carrying them 62 to 31. Now he's carrying them 75 to 12. I mean, there you go. There you have it. Even traditional Republicans, Trump was at 49.1, which is up from 43. DeSantis fell from 39 to 25. So Trump made gains everywhere. He really did. Those who say they're unsure and have no opinion is the one area where Trump declined a little bit. Trump was at 55, and DeSantis was at Trump was at 45, which is down from 55. DeSantis rose from 21 to 26. Now, the problem for DeSantis is this was less this time. All right. There were just more people who identified as America Firsters. By education, Trump's taking the high school less, 58 to 16. Some college associate killing it, 62 to 17. That's the biggest share of the vote, not only in the Republican primary, but in a general election as well. Okay? They're just different now than it was in 16. It was a little bit weird. Some things have happened. Some of those high school graduates decided to get like an associate's degree, a 2-year degree. And a lot of people who thought they were going to go on a 4-year did not. Things have happened in Florida. I was a little bit confused in 2020. Like, this looks different to me than usual. But that's why you don't wait for exit polls, by the way. No exit poll is the same every election cycle. So you have to deal with the basics. You have to deal with the core demographics that you know have to be weighted. And then you let the others adjust. Because if I didn't, and I would have waited for education, I would have been wrong in Florida. I would have had Biden +1 or something. Thank God I didn't. Trump +3. Yeah. I mean, there is, nothing else to say here. Except for Trump is, just like we saw in our national poll, which others are showing as well. So, I mean, I'm hearing all of these people go, that's ridiculous. He's leading with post-grads by that much. Yeah, he's in a majority with 4-year grads too. I mean, that's why his lead has gotten so big. And we're not the only ones. Just poll came out today. Just today. A very pro-DeSantis poll from YouGov. Has Trump winning, by the way, against Biden. But that's like a, 11-point shift from their final poll or something in 2020. But you can clearly see that Trump is doing better than he was with college grads. Last time, let's see how it changed. No, he actually fell with post grads. He fell from 51 to 45, but DeSantis fell from 28 to 24. And there are 4.2 are undecided. Okay, last month there was 8. So, Vivek is getting some of that. Nikki Haley is getting some of that. Chris Christie is getting some of that. The blue means it's statistically different. There is a significant difference statistically between this cell and the following. High school, less, some college associate. In other words, he's getting a lot more out of this group than he did any other group, basically, for their size. It always goes by the column size. I could change that, but I think this makes more sense to show you this. But anyway, 4 years, he's skyrocketed. DeSantis was still ahead by 3 points with those who had a 4-year college degree. Now, Trump leads 54 to 20. That's a big reversal from 45 to 42 last month. Some college associate, Trump led 53 to 34. Now he leads 62 to 17. It's a big deal. DeSantis fell a little bit with those who have a high school degree or less, but then again, so did Trump. Trump was at 64 to 22, and now it's 58 to 16. Still is what it is. 5% are undecided. 6% of this group are undecided, which is some college associates, the biggest group out there. And there we go. Income. Do we have to go through all this? I mean, honestly, religion, we know what's going on here. Trump is leading with Protestants. He's leading with Catholics. He's leading with Jews. He's leading with those who have another religion. He's leading with no religion. It's dominant, folks. Evangelicals, are you one? Yes. 60 to 21. Are you not? No, I'm not. 53-20. No opinion, 65-17. And remember, by the way, well, I'll wait on that. White evangelicals, 63-22. Okay. Areas, always fun to look at. Let's compare this to last month, actually. Area and region, I do want to compare to last month. Trump leads in rural Florida, which is only about 9 to 10% of the vote. It's not that much. 56-31. It's a little bit more than that this time. I personally wait. If you're going to wait by geography, I like zips because area, people don't know what the hell they're in. And the census actually just changed definitions. Like, what does it constitute to be in an urban area? They changed the definitions. So, it's confusing to people. So wait by geography, wait by zip. 56-31 now is 67-18. It's a big rural lead. In the suburbs, Trump led DeSantis last month 49-35. Now Trump leads 53-21. So that's a change. Trump ticked up a couple of points, about 4 points. DeSantis fell about 14. That's a big change. All right, and in urban areas, Florida's urban. It's got a lot of urban areas, but they're not urban in the ways that other states are urban, right? So even North Carolina, 2 states up, right? Even Georgia, which is 1 state up. Florida really doesn't have an Atlanta. Am I saying this right, Laura? Like, Florida has ghettos, folks. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, it's different. Like, have you ever been to the ghetto of Miami? Like, it's just different. And I know most people listening are like, nah, I've never been in the damn ghetto of Miami. There's no Detroit. Even though there is, Gainesville's not even a comparable example. I mean, even though there is a, can you even call that a ghetto? You and I used to laugh at that all the time. Right, Laura? Oh, I don't want to go to that part of Gainesville. It's the ghetto over there. And we're like, that's not a ghetto. That's a poor neighborhood, you idiot. It's the difference between a ghetto. Ghetto, you can't walk down. Hilarious. Anyway, there's no real, it's very urban, but it has a higher threshold, like we have talked about before. Why can Republicans still carry North Carolina, but are having problems with Arizona and Georgia? The threshold, around 60% urban vote, is a problem in states like Michigan, in states like Georgia, in states like Arizona. But it's not a problem in Florida. Even though it's not 60% in Florida, but it's a big urban vote. Nevada, too, by the way. Considering Clark County is 70% of the vote, a different socioeconomic class, different educational class. It's just different. All right, so that's what we have for area. Let's look to region. And wait, you'll see how good Trump is doing against the first thing, one of the normal critic idiots of mine. The first thing, I guess somebody had given them the poll after it was released on locals. The first thing he said is, there's no way Trump's doing that well in urban Florida. Look at how he's got Trump in the urban areas. Trump almost won urban Florida last time. What are you talking about? It's a few points away. They just don't know what they're talking about. Just shut up. Don't get in a battle of wits when you're unarmed. Simpletons. All right, Panhandle was a big, big change this time. I did include it with the North last time. This time I left it separate. Let's call it 8%. Let's call it 10% overall statewide. All right. This is a big difference. So Trump is ahead 58-18 in the Panhandle and 54-21 in North Central Florida. Last time it was combined 47-37. And it was close. It's only a 10-point difference. That's a big deal. That shows the change in the white vote. Now, are there Hispanics elsewhere in North Central Florida? There are, of course. But that is predominantly the change in the white vote, making Trump much stronger in Greater Alachua, making Trump much stronger in Bay County, in Liberty, in Escambia, in hell, even Gadsden and Leon. DeSantis is going to carry him, but he's not going to carry him by the, well, if it was today, he wouldn't carry him by the margin he's going to carry him now. Whites in Duval that are educated with 4-year degrees. Duval County in the Northeast that we were talking about before, there was a lot more blue there last time in that map than there is this time. That's it. Big deal. And again, Gainesville, outside of Gainesville in Greater Alachua, Marion County, the horse capital of the world, where Ocala is. That's a big deal. DeSantis was doing better there before. Or the Orlando Atlantic coast, somewhere Trump, again, was barely ahead. 43.2 to 42.5. DeSantis' support has completely collapsed. 57.2 to 19%. The Tampa Bay area is one area where DeSantis remains in the 20s along with North Central Florida, but I mean, he's in the 20s here, 22.1, and Trump is at 47.4. Vivek got a nice chunk of the vote there. Nikki Haley, I don't know, like they're calling it a surge. I would object to that the same way I objected to calling Vivek what I saw for Vivek as a surge. Because it's like you surge from 4 to 8%. Then you surge from 8 to 12%. Whatever it may be. I mean, you're still at 12%. So I don't know how you correctly characterize what Nikki Haley's doing here from like 3 points to 7 points as a surge. Even 10, 12. You're still at 10 or 12%. Like, that's not a surge is flying up into the 40s or something. Yeah, Laura, that's a surge. Like, this is not a surge. It's a hiccup. Credit to Laura. She came up with that. I heard her say. I just really was repeating her, like, exactly. It's a hiccup. And Laura, chances are in 2 weeks it'll be gone. Right? I mean, it's let's stipulate for a moment she got a debate bump. Nikki Haley. I just don't know. Trump's own pollster, Fabrizio, who I don't 100% take stock. I just don't. Like, Michigan was much closer than he was saying it was. Other states, like, I just don't. It's the same way I tell you don't put much stock in, like, McLaughlin, who's also Trump's internal pollster. Like, you can have one giving a rosy picture, one trying to give a dire picture. How about you just give him the picture? You have the whole picture, the real picture. And then you have DeSantis' people who are trying to give a rosy, super rosy picture. But it was very clear that both, or at least in South Carolina and Iowa, Trump's pollster was saying that Nikki Haley was rising. Well, you might consider that in those two states. But generally everywhere else, it was Vivek. And still, again, I don't call it a surge. The Gulf Coast and mid-Florida. South of Tampa. Monroe, right? Trump is up 57 to 30. And now he is up 65.1 to 13.6, or 65 to 14. Miami is one area where DeSantis, well, not really because he fell too. But, I mean, Trump was blowing him away 60 to 25, and now it's 56 to 18. So it's possible it's just noise on behalf of both of them. Trump fell 4 points, whereas DeSantis fell 7, right? 7, 18, but 25. Yeah, 7 points. So could be noise. I mean, the situation is the same with Hispanics. A little bit more dire for DeSantis. Not a little bit more. It's dire. So there you have it. It's 118. Let's move into the generals. Let's move it along. All right. Or actually, let's look at the Democrat real quick. Just real quick. Joe Biden continues to enjoy Florida as one of his stronger nomination states. He's at 67% on polling. Kennedy is only at 7.6. Marianne Williamson is only at 4.1. Someone else is only at 8.4. And unsure, no opinions, only at 13%. Joe Biden has a commanding lead. What I find interesting about it is Panhandle is at 73. 11 for Robert Kennedy Jr. Not all that different from, let's say, Orlando, Atlantic Coast, Tampa area. Biden has a little bit less support, but it's undecided support. You know what I mean? That's just, it's support he just lost from the undecided. In Miami, he's killing it. Come on, guys, let's be honest. 69-5? He's killing it. 16% undecided. What if those people break for Biden? Maybe they're not. Maybe they're not even undecided. They're lying to us and they're going to vote for RFK. They just don't want to say it. Doesn't really matter. This is an absolutely dominating lead. RFK is not making anything happen here. Republican candidate specific support, we're going to look at a different way. Okay? We're going to look at it from one nomination's point of view. And we'll look at Republicans, for instance. Here is everyone's favorite topic, the Trump or bust vote. Only 49% of Trump voters can be counted on to vote for the nominee in the fall. Oh my God. OMG. And as you can see, the rest of them are actually kind of really close, except for Ron DeSantis's. Why? Because almost all of Ron DeSantis's vote will vote for Donald Trump. Now, 17.7% of DeSantis' voters said they would write in DeSantis. Well, we gave them the chance to test that. He got like 5 write-ins. That's it. That's it. So 3 out of 4 were bluffing. More than 3 out of 4, excuse me, were bluffing. Less than a quarter made good on that promise. The same is not true of Donald Trump. 40% said they would write his name in. 40%. Another 2.5 say they would not vote at all. And when you cross them with those we were talking about before in the someone else and other categories, someone else, other, and undecided categories, that's where those 9 people are. They just wouldn't vote. Now, most of them would do what they said they would do. Not all of them did, but 70% of them did. That is not good. And that's why we have the graphs that we saw before with the pie charts. Those people are not playing around. Let's buy Democrats real quick just to show you. As you can see, Kennedy has some write-in choices, but most of his vote says that they would consider voting for the Republican nominee. On the Trump versus Biden hypothetical, they do vote for Donald Trump. On the Trump versus DeSantis hypothetical, DeSantis gets about half of what Trump gets, but he gets some. He does. Many of them do go third party, and some of them are just lying, and they vote for Joe Biden anyway. Shocker. All right, let's look at Biden versus Trump. Yes, there are some people who vote in the Democratic nomination that ultimately would vote for Donald Trump. I know it's crazy, but it's true. Even some of Biden's own voters, that's statistics for you. Same thing if I was to switch this up with the Republican nomination, same thing. Watch. Of Trump's vote, Joe Biden gets 1.5%. Trump gets 2 of Biden's. Biden gets 1.5 of Trump's. All right. But let's look at all. I know that's statistics for you guys. It really is. Trump is ahead with women I think once some of them decided, and if they were forced, they would ultimately vote for Joe Biden. These are Democratic. Although some of them are Democratic women, to be sure. I just think that Trump has a fairly decent chance to tie up women, and these men are going to go to him. So Trump is going to carry Florida. He could win women. Honestly, let me just say this real quick. He could win women. He could. And he's doing like he did in 2020. He's doing better. That group that was 18 to 24 that voted for Trump in 2020, they're now 25 to 29. This was actually the more pro Biden group in 2020. Well, they've moved on, which is why 30 to 39 is closer than you'd expect because Trump carried them last time. But younger voters, the 18 to 24 now, are the closer vote. All right. So, so where are we at? Voting groups, Trump is ahead basically of every single age group, which almost happened anyway in 2020, if it was not for the 18 to 24s. Let's look by race. Trump is ahead with white voters. Please take note that Trump absolutely is ahead with Hispanic voters. When we look at the 2020 vote with Hispanics, they say they voted for Biden by about, I think it was 4 or 5 points. And that is actually really close to what it was in 2020. So that shift is real. Is it 14 points? I don't know. But sampling errors for subgroups are higher, remember? But I still think he is going to carry it. Black voters, he's doing exceptionally well. Asians, I think he'd lose in the end, but he would be in the 40s. He was last time. Doesn't surprise me at all. He's clobbering Joe Biden with Cubans. Clobbering him. 62 to 20. He is right up his butt with Puerto Ricans and other Hispanic groups he carries. Venezuelans, Mexicans, Guatemalans, etc., etc. Now let's go to party. I'm going to make it closer now that we're getting far away. By party, Trump gets a little bit more of his base than Biden does, but it's both very close. The crossover vote favors Trump by 2 points, and the independent vote is Trump plus 5. So it would be a huge, huge win considering in self-identification, not in registration. In registration, it was like R plus 2.5 or something. Or R plus, maybe R plus 2.5. I'd have to go back and look. In self-identification, it was R plus damn near 8. Which is what basically every exit pollster found. I think Fox was R plus 11 or something. Something ridiculous. But then again, they had like 8% independent. That's just the way Fox does things. And by the way, notice very few, only 2% within the sampling era, statistically insignificant, say that they would write somebody else in. Ideology. Trump is carrying conservatives 79 to 7. He's losing moderates, but he's barely losing them, and he's taking 15% of liberals. You know what? This is important. I got to show ideology. Look, DeSantis is underperforming with conservatives. He's underperforming Trump. He's losing moderates too, but he's losing them by a bigger margin. And instead of 15, 16% of liberals, he takes 12. All right. I just had to point that out. We don't have to use the West one. You guys can go and do that all you want. It's already 1:30, and I see some questions I do want to answer. But we can look by education. I meant to do white working class. I didn't. You can see Trump is doing very well, even with college graduates. But it's the some college associate degree that is giving him his lead. And he's holding his own with 4-year college grads, which, shocker, I'm going to tell you right now, I think he's going to win. Why? Because of who's remaining. And these people, a lot of them, I just don't believe them. I think they're bluffing. I think that the third-party vote share would go down, and Trump would carry educated voters by a few points. Not post-grads. He's going to lose post-grads, although he's going to do better with them. He'll get 40% of them once they break. Oh my God, Rich, that's crazy. Okay, go look at the exit polls in 2020. It's not crazy. It's Florida. It's Trumpy. And then looking at DeSantis, he just underperforms pretty badly. He's under 50% with high school or less. I mean, it's really pathetic. Be honest with you. And he's not doing any better with advanced grads or 4-year grad. He's just not. It's not It's a very, very underwhelming performance, especially since a lot of these people voted for him for governor. You have to remember that. Of the people in this poll, let me just see. Do something really simple, really quick. Voter screens. Let me give you, where's the voter screen? Nope, vote history. 2022. Give me 1 second. I just want to, not going to save it. In this sample, remember, it's going to be a general election, so it's going to be damn near everybody. 83.4% voted in 2022, 16.6 did not. So that's actually, to compare it to turnout, that's almost dead on the money compared to what we'd expect or project it to be now. I know. It's a lot to go through, but I'm trying to just bullet through here. We don't need to go over that. We can look at white evangelicals. It's a big deal. Trump is at 72% with white evangelicals. DeSantis is at 61%. Let's look by actually real quick by religion. What about Catholics? The all-important Catholic group. DeSantis is carrying them 44-31. Trump is carrying them 52-30. Big difference. By area, Trump is ahead in the burbs by 4. DeSantis is down by 2. Also in rural, he's up by 26 points, we'll call it. At 50, Trump is at 60, and he's ahead almost 40 points. So big difference. And then that's the urban thing we were talking about before. I think a lot of them would decide, and of course they would go to Biden. There's a lot of undecided Biden voters there, but Trump could do it. He could carry it because of Miami and how he's doing in some of these other so-called urban areas. There's a lot of people in Tampa who say they're in an urban area. By region, Panhandle, 51-32 Trump. North Central, Miami and the Gold Coast. Look how close it is. It's 2 points. I'm telling you, Trump's going to carry it. He's way ahead in Southwest. Tampa, he's way ahead. This is a big swing. This is due to Hillsdale and Pinellas. Of course, Pasco's in there too, but they swung big time. And go in there and cross the 2020 vote when you guys get a chance, and you'll see that it's just a lot of Biden voters saying that now they'll vote for Trump. In Orlando's, the Atlantic Coast, one area where Biden's doing a little bit surprisingly well, but sampling errors for subgroups are what? Higher, right? And the exit polls are actually pretty close to that. Looking at DeSantis, he is 11 points behind, so you're talking about a 10-point underperformance. He's ahead in the Panhandle. It's not by much. There's just too many someone else's and too many write-ins. You know what? Let's just get down to it. You guys see the point. He is down in the Southeast Gold Coast. His vote share looks a lot like a traditional pre-Trump vote share for Miami. A lot of Hispanics who even voted for him for governor who just are either undecided or just would vote for Joe Biden. Let's go to the write-ins when it's just the hypothetical with Trump. Look at how many there are. And they're all Donald Trump. Look at across the board. I'm going to let you guys soak this in for a second. Out of the 91 write-ins, which again is what? 80% ballpark of all the people who said they would write someone in did. And 93 in this one, I think the other one's 95. In this one, but without Weston, 93.4% of them are Donald Trump. Vivek got 3. Mike Pence got 1. Nikki Haley got 1. The rest of them are Donald Trump. Look at how many come from the Southeast Gold Coast area. Look at how many come from Monroe and Fort Myers. I mean, this is not good. Just not good for Republicans. By the way, Democrats have put, it's not a ton of money. I want to say it's like $1 million toward registering voters in Florida. Let's look at the write-ins with West on the ballot. 94%. Every write-in in the Panhandle goes to Trump. Every write-in except for one in North Central Florida goes to Trump. Every write-in in the Orlando, Atlantic coast area goes to Trump. Every write-in except for one in the Tampa Bay area goes to Trump. Every single one in the Southwest Gulf and mid-Florida region of the state goes to Trump. And 82% in the Miami area goes to Trump. 3 went to Vivek, and that's where Mike Pence got his other one. It's 1:33. Let me get to some questions that Laura has thrown in here. I just don't know what else to say. I don't know what else people. I just don't know what to say. What else you need to see? There's just a whole lot of talking and bloviating going on, and you're just not doing anyone a service. It's really rather stupid. It's denial. It is, Laura. It is. It's denial, and it's not a river in Egypt. All right? It's just not. And I'm tempted to show them the interviews we showed them on Monday by phone. We wrapped up, it came to like 370 or something. I'm tempted to show you what it was because it's just it's unbelievable. And by the way, in the head-to-heads on the phone, Trump is always above 50 or close. He's like 40, 49 point whatever, and then 50.3, I think, is the one it goes to. So these are much more likely voters. It was a bloodbath for Ron DeSantis, a total bloodbath. 204 Republicans we spoke to on Monday out of the 370 whatever interviews. It's just a total bloodbath. How bad? This bad. 65.2%. 133 responses. 15.7 went to Ron DeSantis at 32 responses. Nikki Haley actually pulled ahead of Vivek. 5.9, 12 responses. I mean, it's just few, so few. When we're talking about what is 2.5% mean in that day for Chris Christie? It means 5 people. 5. Like how many fingers you have on your hand. That's it. It's not close. That's the Legend of Zelda one. I'll do that. Have we asked Florida voters if Ron DeSantis isn't elected president candidate via the primary, would they re-elect him as governor? They can't, Jay. He's termed out. We could ask him about Senate. I actually think, Charlie Kirk, Stinchfield, a bunch of people had said that the advisors are leading him to his doom and that there's a way to salvage his career. That's to drop out, give the money to the party to registered voters, although I would not give it to the RNC. I would give it to third-party people who know what they're doing. The RNC can't do it. They cannot do it, and their data operation sucks. A third-party person could easily share that new data with them, and they can use it how they will in their own system. But I would not use the RNC system to register new voters, especially not those you're trying to put on a permanent absentee mail-in ballot list. I mean, they're just awful. They'll never maintain them. Years will go by, and you'll see wrong phone numbers and wrong addresses, as opposed to somebody who's third-party and not only has the resources to do it, but has the incentive to do it. It's their job. They're getting paid for it to check up on these people periodically and update their information, because they could say they do that all they want until they're blue in the face. They don't. Otherwise, we would not constantly have people, candidates, whatever, coming to us saying, can you do me a favor and scrub my list? Can you do me a favor and append the list? Dedupe the list and tell me what appends you can make. It is the famous line. Laura just said that's like everybody's famous line nowadays. It is. And if they had the ability to do it, they share all their information with candidates and stuff. Then why aren't they doing it? Why are their lists so old and stale? Why is their information garbage? Because they're not doing it. Right. Exactly, Laura. Exactly. Do you ask GOP respondents if they are active in their local GOP? No, we don't. You wouldn't get a lot, honestly. Which is probably, hell, you know what? I don't know if I could do that in every, single project, but it would be kind of worth checking that over time. This way we would know whether or not people are more active today than they were, let's say, for 2022 or something. Yeah, it's a good question. Remember when in 2019 the media were rooting for Hurricane Dorian to destroy Palm Beach and Mar-a-Lago because of Trump? I do, crew kid. Absolutely. They wanted people hurt with Dorian. Maybe it'll roll in there and destroy Mar-a-Lago. If it destroys Mar-a-Lago, you idiots, do you have any idea what it's going to do to the surrounding area? They don't give a damn. They don't give a damn. I watched, disgracefully, I'm not going to get into who it is, a member of my own family fabricate a story because she's a rabidly sick Democrat. Fabricate a story. And she's not my family. I disowned her a long time ago. But fabricate a story to make Rick Scott look bad. It's his fault the power went off and now we're without our backup oxygen. If you didn't smoke cigarettes for 55 years and drink 5 bottles of sherry a night, you wouldn't need the bottle of oxygen. Boop, boop, beedoo, boop. Now you know what I'm talking about, you hag. And by the way, you aged terribly. You look like the water hag from the Witcher 3 video game. You guys open up the bestiary. I swear to God, that's what this woman looks like. Open up your bestiaries. Wild Hunt. Stop. I'm laughing so hard I choked on the water. Gamers know what I'm talking about.
Do not make me cut you and go to music and show you who really runs this stream, all right?
She is such a disgrace to the human race. He cut my power. No, he didn't, you idiot. A little something
I
called
hear
a
music in your
hurricane hit.
future. I hear rollout music.
Anyway,
Thank you. Moving on.
what pollster is DeSantis using, the campaign using? There's 2 different pollsters for DeSantis. One's not really his pollster anymore. WPA Intel is polling for Never Back Down. And they're not really his pollster because Never Back Down could back down from Ron DeSantis anytime they want, which is why you see all of them head-to-heads in the leaked documents with Tim Scott, because a lot of their donors ready to flee and go to Tim Scott or Youngkin or anybody. But his campaign pollster is Public Opinion Strategies, all right, which is the same firm that Mitt Romney used. And is their poll data different, or are they milking DeSantis? They're milking the hell out of them. Their polling data is much different. Even I think it was WPA Intel. Their one ballot was like pretty close to Ann Seltzer in Iowa. But yeah, some of the other stuff is way out of the realm. Like when the New Hampshire poll leaked and Emerson College put out theirs. I mean, look, if Spencer is wrong, Spencer Kimball at Emerson College, he's not wrong because somebody's doing something funny. I'll just say, like, these are people who are getting pretty nasty with me, and I just don't even care. I don't care about them enough to retaliate every day. Like they sit there on their phones, like, I hate this guy all day. Like, I wish you luck. Like, get a wife, like, or get happiness. Let me say. But like I get calls multiple times a week and day from other pollsters every time they release a poll. Like, did you see this crap? Like, did you see this garbage? And it's such a shame, and people get offended by it because we're over here trying to increase the credibility of our industry, and they're just every day people working against that goal. So yeah, they've been an outlier, especially public opinion. You have Jim Lee, who knows Pennsylvania, even though he's another one they attack from Susquehanna. Pennsylvania is the only one Jim and I missed last year. The rest of them that they're citing are like months old polls, or that's not you can't. That's ridiculous. If you don't judge somebody for a poll they did in May or something, that's crazy. But we both maintain that Oz should have won that seat by a point. He didn't get the vote out to do it, and Republicans were outmaneuvered on the ground. But Oz, the vote preference was there for Oz to win that seat. He just didn't pull it off. It was close, but he didn't pull it off. And that was on him, and that's on his campaign. That's on the Republican Party. They're not turnout operations like Donald Trump is a one-man turnout operation. The guy in 2 election cycles didn't need a ground game to turn people out for him. They come out for him. That is not normal. Barack Obama could do it, although he did have a good ground game. Some people could do it, and, but it's not normal that you see that happen with people, with candidates. What else? Let me see about it. Even back then, Jim Lee puts out a poll showing DeSantis down by like 13 points in Pennsylvania. And they put out a poll like the next day saying he's only down in Minnesota by 2. It's just insane. Michigan, he's doing so much better than Trump in Michigan. Okay, come on. Because something about him says he'd do better in Macomb County, Michigan. Like, get the hell out of here. And then Emerson, very different. A couple weeks later, Mitchell Research had the race with Trump and Biden tied, and DeSantis was down by, I think, 12 or 13. So, yeah, they're milking him. They're way, at the best case I could say about this, Kentucky, they're outside they're outside the consensus. So either we're all wrong and they're right, or they're milking. Cynic in chief. The primaries are practically over. Yes. Yeah, they are. They're hoping something out of the norm, something that's never happened before, a president being indicted and, an attempted imprisoned, trying to get their friends to remove him from the ballot. They're hoping for that because everybody knows that Trump, you said it yourself, Trump is over 50% by a good amount. No surge can change that. It's Trump or oblivion for the Republican Party. They don't want to hear that. They think that they're going to be able to concoct some way to rip off the delegates or take them off the ballot, and that you're going to suck it up. They live in another world. They don't live on planet Earth with you and I. They really don't. Yeah. Man. Jonathan asks, what a great question. Because but let me just say this, Cynic, I totally agree with you. I think if they do something like this, and you can see New Hampshire back down, smart move. But if they didn't, let's say, and I don't think we've seen the end or heard the last of these efforts. It's like every day, someone in the Republican Party wakes up and tries to figure out the best way to destroy their own party. They're finished if they pull something like that. Finished. Pop in and say it, Laura. No one can hear you.
What I'm saying is the reason why I think that they're willing to do all this and destroy like their right to power for, I don't know, a century or so, give a little, take a little, it's because they are terrified of what will happen to them if Trump wins. Or I should say when Trump wins.
Yeah, I got to agree with that. I got to agree with that 100%. And I just don't, when we have these big change in the guard, these big historical changes in the guard and like dichotomy shift and realignments happen, there are always these people who are left behind. They, think they know better, and yet they're so stupid. Laura and I, the other day, were watching The Big Short. And the amount of fraud and criminal activity that these stupid, otherwise very stupid people engaged in, all to dismiss something that they thought could never happen. The U.S. housing market fails. They never believed that would ever happen. Nobody bets against housing. Nobody bets against housing. Even as the securities are going under in these subprime wrapped garbage securities, Right? The CODs are junk. The mortgages that are overlapping in CODs are all junk. They still, big part of that was just stupidity and being out of touch with basic fundamentals that kept it going for a while. The headlines were blaring. Delinquencies and foreclosures are rising this much. They're up to 4% now. They're up to 5%. Oh, we're going to maintain them at 5%. If you go, if they get to 8, the whole thing comes down. It hits 5%. Don't worry, it's not going 8%. It hits 6%. I mean, they literally waited for it to go over 8 and everything to come crumbling down before they finally faced reality. And then don't worry, because George Bush and Hank Paulson to the rescue anyway. Meanwhile, in order to cover for their stupidity, they engaged in grossly fraudulent and grossly illegal behavior. And you guys, if you have never seen that, you should watch it. You smart people who do know how the world works, and that world works, especially somebody like Dr. Burry, and others. There were others. They were like, whoa, what's going on? The mortgages are failing. Why are you offering the same or more expensive bid for these securities still? They had to get the banks to write them because no option exists. You couldn't bet against the housing market. No option existed to do that. There was no investment vehicle when these guys decided they wanted to do that. They had to go to the bank and say, make me one. The banks laughed and scoffed. They thought they were crazy. Then they said, you have to pay us premiums until the credit default swap can be sold. Until you get in the money, basically. And so these guys are forced to pay the premiums. Millions and millions of dollars. Why? Because they got no help from S&P. They got no help from Moody's. They got no help from the SEC. Like, where's the damn credit downgrade? Disgusting. Disgusting. And part of it, again, a lot of it was just total stupidity. There's one part in the movie when they go to Vegas to try to make sure that their investments, these ideas that they bet in, are sound. And they run into these people from the banking industry. And that it's like a convention. And they're talking to these people, and it dawns on them that these people really don't. It's 1/3 corrupt, 1/3 stupid, and 1/3 scared, coward, just like the Republican Party. That's what they ran into there. And so this is going to take down, that is when actually one of them realized this is not only going to pay out for us, this is going to take down the global economy. The banks who are meant to pay on these credit default swaps may not actually have the assets. This is going to be so bad to pay us. Unbelievable. And it's the same thing, is what I'm saying. The mentality is very much the same. All right. Jonathan Stein asks, who qualifies as a moderate? What does that really mean? Wow, you're speaking my language, Jonathan. I hate the term moderate. I'm forced to use it because I'm a pollster. It's part of the nomenclature in the world that I work in, live in. But for me personally, a moderate is someone who doesn't have any principles. What do you mean you're moderate on the Second Amendment? What do you mean you're moderate on abortion rights? So what you really mean is you don't fully believe in the Second Amendment and you don't object to murder. Because in my mind, that's what it is. Now, I understand not all Americans share my view. That's not my point. But what does it mean to be moderate in this? What it means is you have no principles. You're fungible on everything. And with conservatives, it's particularly egregious because you claim to be a conservative, like John Duarte, for instance. Take him. He fights, lies, he fights to get the seat. Kevin McCarthy brings in millions to help him. He lies, pretends to be a Trumper, pretends to be the conservative fighter for you, and then gets in there and signs every single one of Kevin McCarthy's piece of shit bills that gets put in front of him. Ukraine, the budget, whatever. He's trying to get amnesty so he can get cheap labor, because that's what he himself and his business relies on. He wants cheap labor after claiming that he's a Trumper on the border. So we can sell more, so we can sell more defunct products and trees and destroy more, populations of freshwater shrimp or something. The bottom line is that doesn't make you a moderate. That makes you a fraud. That makes you a liar. That makes you somebody who doesn't believe in anything. If I have principles on something, that's it for me, bro. That's it. That's a principled position. Compromise on your principles means you're a sellout. Doesn't make you a wise person. It doesn't make you fair-minded, Laura, right? It's like I've said before, what they did with David in that race, and David Giglio. Now, if David wants to challenge him, there are all these emails going around that he's sending out because he's scared of David, terrified. Yeah, he's an alt-righter. We have to stop these ultra-mag words right out of Joe Biden and the Democrats' dictionary. The fact is, you lied. Right. Thank you, Laura. The fact is, David isn't ultra anything. He's what he said he was. He's what you said you were, because you were plagiarizing everything about the guy to try to win. That doesn't make you the moderate, more electable one. It makes you a liar. Who won by 400 votes when it was 50.8% turnout and majority white in a majority Hispanic district. What the hell do you think is going to happen when a presidential electorate comes out to vote? You better hope Trump just drags those Hispanics with him. If I was you, I'd be fighting tooth and nail to get Donald Trump on that ballot, because that's the only way in hell you're going to survive that election. You can pretend and still get, the suburban housewives you're chasing around. You can pretend to be the fair-minded one and then pray to God that Donald Trump gets voters to come out to vote for him, and then just ticks your name in there anyway, because they're there for him. So they might as well hit the same letter. What do you think is going on with the cover-up in Hawaii? I think there's a lot of dead kids, Jay, and they don't want to be responsible for it. Now, listen, you can't politicize weather events and things like that. This is totally different. You can't go to vacation when God knows what is going on. If Ron ever planned an event close enough to me, I'd spend at least 3 hours traveling just to heckle him. That's pretty funny. Somebody asked me, here it is, Norm. If Trump wins, can we call the Republican Party something else, like what happened with the Whigs? Yeah. If Trump wins, he is the de facto leader of the Republican Party. That's the way it works. He could just break off and start his own thing, or he could try to change it. Problem is, you can have a lot of people revolt. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do it anyway. I don't really care. You can have a lot of people revolt, and then procedurally, that could become problematic in some cases. So if you need a certain amount of Republicans to get something done, they would need the America First Party to get on with them, and vice versa. It would also probably present some logistical issues in red states, but they would get ironed out. As you said, this has happened before, and they would get ironed out. But it wouldn't be without bumps in the road. That's all I'm saying. Reg, I'll call you Reg. Since RD isn't getting winning support, blown VP, and can't run for Florida governor again, where does he go next? Although doubtful, even if he drops out. There's a lot. He had a bright future. He could have run for Senate. He could have been a junior senator while he ran for president. He has a lot. Like, if he was to get out, if he makes voters cast one vote against Donald Trump in his direction, he's done. Because I'm telling you, I've been told by donors who speak to his people and want accountability, that he is prepared to just lose everywhere in order to have him be the second runner-up with delegates. If that is the case, really. And you go on to get creamed in Florida, and you go on to get creamed in Georgia, and you get creamed everywhere else, which is happening. Why? You did a little bit better than expected in Iowa, maybe, or something like that. I don't think there's ever going back. There's no going back after that. Could he pull something like what Charlie Kirk said and survive at this point? If he did it the way Charlie Kirk said he had to do it. If he did it the way Stinchfield said he had to do it, he probably could. But they would always be skeptical of him, and they would always keep one, watchful eye on him. But there are a lot of people, including donors, who have said things to me like, this is only happening because of Ron DeSantis. Like, what do you mean? They only feel they can do this to the leading Republican candidate for president who's beating Joe Biden in the polls because he has opponents like Ron DeSantis who, by complicity or by silence, by the very nature of how we all know what they're doing. They need him. They need Democrats to lawfare him like this in order to have a chance. That it essentially runs cover for the deep state to do this to Trump. And I've heard this even from people who supported DeSantis. I think it would go a long way in the minds of those people if he did do something, and what Kirk and others, emphatically, I am dropping out because this is just a threat to our Constitution, our way of life. And, I'm backing the former president because no former president, we don't want leaders standing up to do the right thing get thrown in jail. We won't have any good people stand up anymore. There's so much riding on it. And that's why I'm giving this money to, which I saw a lot of DeSantis supporters on Twitter mocking Charlie Kirk for suggesting that. Like Laura said before, they're delusional. They don't understand, or maybe they don't care, that they're killing this guy, man. He could have ran for Senate. He could have been a leader even without a public office. He could have been a leader for a long time. And by the way, he would have made a fortune anyway. So much he could have done. It's sad. I hate to see it. I really do. Garrett says, what's the best to approach the moderates? One who are scared to stand up. I think most people are still thinking it's 2015 where liberal culture is dominant. It's more of a battle now. Garrett, nicely, I have engaged with moderates and said what I said before about them, only in a much nicer way, and actually crack through. Like, listen, what you're essentially admitting to intellectually is that you don't have a principled position on either one of these issues. You don't believe in that position, with all your heart. You don't. Otherwise, you would stand up for what you believe in. So being a so-called moderate and compromising all the time is really just a way of saying I get steamrolled most of the time, and I agree with it. And I tell them, you have to take a long, hard look in the mirror and decide what it is you really believe in. I'm only nice, much nicer. And I do see my cues going there. It's 2:01. All right, we'll do this more. The poll obviously is already out on locals. I'm going to be sending a lot more of other stuff, charts, all sorts of things. Do me a favor and go through the demographics with a fine-tooth comb. All right? Look at the write-ins, who these people are. Look at them by race. Look at them by age. And try to cross them with those who actually do write in. Look at the percentages of people when they don't write in. What are they doing? What are the other ones doing? Are they universally picking another candidate so they were bluffing? Or maybe are they going to someone else? Or, I don't know, I'm undecided. When you know that probably they are, in fact, going to write someone in. The write-in language, I can't even make a word cloud for it. Right, Laura? Some were just straight up Donald Trump. Some were F you. Mad people. Mad people. All right, I'll be on Sean Parnell 5:25 tonight. I will share it. Don't forget. check it out. We appreciate you guys stopping by there. And always join the locals community, peoplespundit.locals.com. If you like the videos, like it, share. Like it, follow, subscribe, and share. See you on Friday, folks. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. All the best.